Hi, and welcome to Wall Street Today. I am your host, Zack Viscomi, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Michael Miller. Now, Michael Miller, you've been featured on all sorts of publications and things, from Fortune magazine to the local news in Dallas. Your inspiration has come from a lot of different things, but before we get into any of that, I've got to ask you, what is this hat all about?
So, Matt did not put me up to this. He doesn't even know I'm up here.
Okay.
But he runs a company called Meat Church. And one of the things I love is how he pours into other people. And that's what I love to do. I love to serve people that pour into other people. And one of the things Matt does, Matt sells rubs and spices, right? Mm-hmm. And so he could just look at it as, that's what I do. I sell rubs and spices. But no, he goes online, he does YouTube videos, showing people how to cook brisket, which is a big
Texas,
thing in Texas. Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're a Yankee like me from the city, in Ohio, and you're down there, you better learn. You better learn how to cook that brisket well. And I learned everything from Matt. Matt, is very instructive. But not only that, one of the things that he does is he goes around and he shows love to local barbecue places and has them on, and just features them and helps them. I don't even think he realizes, he probably has an idea, he's helping some people, but he has no idea all the lives that he's affecting. So like, when we had a memorial for my mom just a few weeks ago, I cooked a brisket for my family. That's special. Yeah. They came down from North Carolina, so they know a little bit about barbecue up there, but it's more about the sauce and not the smoke. So, but yeah, I just wanted to show Matt some love, because he pours into so many people, and that's what my business is all about. It's helping equip difference makers, bridging the gap between their God-given means and their God-given meaning, so that when they sit one day before our Creator, He'll tell them, well done. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. Multiplier effect with maximum impact. It gives you the joy and the peace that's beyond understanding.
That's cool. And so obviously you just touched on it now, and as we were talking before stage, we share a lot of common, obviously, in our faith and things like that, and now you incorporate that into your financial services business. I mean, that's really what it's all about. So faith-based financial services. I mean, tell me a little bit more about that and how they tie into it.
Absolutely. Great question, Zach. So traditional planning's broken. I mean, let's face it. Used to, people sit down, they give their statements. It's all about the numbers. But the numbers, the money is just a tool to do something bigger. And the key is to lead with finding out what their story is. What are their gifts? What are the things they're passionate about? I deal a lot with retirees, pre-retirees, mainly business owners. So they're going into that next chapter of life, and they don't want to stare at four walls. So it's helping them figure out what is their greater purpose, what is their greater meaning, what are the resources that God has given them, the skills, the talent, the time, the abilities, and help them utilize that, bridge that gap, show them strategies that will help them accomplish those goals.
That's awesome.
And make a difference.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, working with mostly business owners and things like that, and as you said earlier when we were, kind of behind the scenes, that a lot of the people that you're working with are retiring from something, which I thought was just like a very great way to frame that, but they don't have anything to retire to. They didn't really think about that. They were growing their business. They were, trying to make that successful.
Right.
And then they get to the point where they want to exit, and it's kind of like, well, now what? Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that's a great need, and obviously one that you've been filling. So also there's a lot of other things that we share in common. And so, you've got faith, family, and country, right? So,
amen, brother.
And so you served with the 82nd.
Yes, sir.
And so tell me a little bit about that, and then your transition into the financial services.
Yeah. So interesting story. When I went into the military, I was originally supposed to be a linguist.
Okay.
So I go to DLI in California, and they realize this boy from the Midwest just ain't getting it when it comes to learning Spanish. So that was definitely not my gift. And so they tested me, like they do. And they said, well, you have this talent for pattern recognition. How would you like to be an analyst, an intelligence analyst? I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. As a 19-year-old, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. Sign me up. And get to Fort Bragg. I'm a private. 18th Airborne Corps calls over to the 82nd and says, we need an analyst. Well, I'm the new guy, right? I'm the guy they can send. And so they sent me over and, was doing our stuff. All of a sudden, radio silence. And the head leader of the cell came in, was the only code-breaking qualified person on Fort Bragg at the time. And she says, I tell you what, rather than send you back to your unit and risk not getting you back when traffic picks back up, how about you look at these messages? Don't feel bad. NSA is working on these on their computer. Just do what you can. And so I'm looking at it. Literally, the end of the day, I was ready to bang my head up against the wall. And that night, I had a dream, and newspaper strips were going in different directions. And I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, what was that? I had no idea. But when I went in and I looked at the messages, all of a sudden I saw a pattern. And so I started writing out the key, and because I flunked out of Spanish, I had to have a linguist come in and look at it and tell me whether it made any sense or not. And he looked at it and he said, oh yeah. He says, that makes a lot of sense. He says, you see that red phone over there? You need to pick it up and you need to tell them this is what the message says, and you need to give them your key. So I picked up the red phone. The red phone went to NSA.
Batman? Oh.
Yeah. So their computers didn't break this code because they'd never seen it before.
Wow.
So now they have it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm done. And keep in mind, remember, I'm a private, so I'm new to all this. I'm thinking I'm done. The leader comes up and tells me, your general is coming over from the 82nd. He wants to be briefed on the intelligence from those messages, as well as how you managed to break those, having not been to code school. And so the story gets better. I go home for lunch because she could tell I was rattled, I've never briefed anybody.
Yeah.
And so I go home.
To your wife.
Yeah. Have my lunch, go back. The facility is in the woods, and my Bronco gets stuck in the mud. Yeah. So security has to come out. They're trying to help me get it unstuck, and I'm pushing on it. So what do you think happens?
You're covered in mud.
Mud just all over me. And I have no time to get cleaned up before I'm briefing my general.
Yeah.
And I'm up there sweating bullets, and I'm just waiting. You know how it is.
Of course.
You got to be strapped, right? So I'm sitting up there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm in so much trouble. Not one word. All he did was look over at the XO, and he goes, well, gentlemen, it looks like we're going on an exercise. And that exercise was Operation Golden Pheasant.
Wow.
Where we jumped into Honduras at 82nd. Yeah.
Wow.
And then they sent me to code school after that. They figured if I could do that without, what could I do with?
It's very obvious, that your ability to recognize patterns has served you well, and obviously, the general recognized that as well and sent you to code school, which is such a cool story. And I imagine too that really applies to how you help your clients now as well. And so I'm just interested in hearing how you've been able to put that to work for your clients.
Yeah. So back a few years ago, I had a client come to me, very successful businesswoman. Built a multi-million-dollar company. She decided she wanted to retire and sell her business. And so it helped her through that transition process. But it was funny, when I was sitting down with her, it was one of those things where you've done this enough and you just kind of learn to read people. And she was very intelligent. And I knew there was no way that she would just stare, at four walls or be content with that, that she was probably going to end up doing something else. So I'm like, okay, I'll play along for a little while, but I'm sure you'll be giving me a call. And sure enough, less than a year, I get the call, and she's like, Mike, I want to go into business with a couple folks. We want to help educate people that are working for like the Walmarts of the world, the Coca-Colas, that want to better themselves, and we want to partner with them to help. So it helps everybody, it helps the employer, it helps the employee. Thought that was a great idea. And so, got all the ducks in a row, got all the logistics lined up. She had a bank that she had worked with before, I guess through her other business. And she went to them to get the loan, to get everything going. The day she goes to sign, they blindside her. And they tell her that she has to give them $2.5 million of her money to keep at the bank for the loan.
Wow.
Never told her about that before that day. And that was the day everything was supposed to launch. So she calls me in a panic, and she's like, what do I do? And I said, well, you're in a situation where you got to do it. You got to send it over there. I said, but just make sure that they understand that they're not to charge you any asset management fees, because that's what you pay me for. And she said, okay, and then the bank agreed to that. So we think we're good. A few months goes by, it's time to rebalance her account. And so that involves, several trades. And normally the custodian that I did it through back then was charging under 20 bucks per trade.
Right.
They charged her thousands of dollars per trade. And when I saw that, it made me sick. And I called her and I said, look, have you looked at your statement? She's like, yeah. She says, I just can't believe this. I said, I tell you what, do you mind if I go and I look for you and see if I can't get you something better? And so I called a custodian and I said, look, here's what's going on. You may have noticed $2.5 million left, and here's why. What can you do? And he says, Mike, I tell you what, you've got a lot of money with us. He says, I can tell you before I even go and ask, we're going to at least be able to save her 2% on this loan. And we're talking a big loan, right?
Yeah.
And so he comes back. It ended up saving her 2.5%, over $80,000 a year, over $500,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So that it's that kind of thing. That's money that she can use to reach more people,
Yeah.
to fund the business, and that kind of thing. So that's where I get my reward. And people come to me originally, they think for investment advice, because that's what I'm known for, the pattern thing you're talking about. They know I'm good at that, recognizing when things are getting stretched with the markets and when we kind of need to peel back the onion a little bit. But it's a lot more than that. As a CFP, we're saving them tons on taxes, through asset location, making sure they're doing the right things, trading at the right time, that kind of thing. So it's really rewarding and so fulfilling.
Yeah, and I mean, I can tell it's something that you're very passionate about, and that's a great story. Not only does it speak to how you help people and you can help people, but also to, just your willingness to go the extra mile, take the extra step to really help somebody. If it's not even something that you have, you're going to find somebody who can do it for them.
Right.
And that's especially in a business where you're dealing with somebody's money. Trust is a really important thing, which I'm sure, obviously being faith-based, you have those morals and those values as sort of the framework of that. And then add into that, just the code of honor you get through the military and all sorts of stuff. And it's just like, you're such a personable and humble guy, yet like you have all of this knowledge and experience and success that, I think your clients and anybody is obviously really lucky to be able to work with you.
Thank you, Zach.
So I ask everybody the same question, and I want to ask you as well. So if we're talking to our viewers or even the next generation or just somebody, what does it take to thrive in today's economy, or just personally, like what piece of advice would you have for them?
I would say first and foremost, pray to God. What would he have you do? That'd be the first thing. You can't go wrong doing that. You start there, you start with him. And then also seek counsel. So Jeremiah 29:11, tells us, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans for hope and a future. So, it starts there. He wants the best for us. But the Bible also says in Proverbs, I believe, where it says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And I know in my personal business, I have my area of expertise. You talk about our military backgrounds, as you well know. You have a team. You depend on each other. Everybody's got their area of specialty. So when I build around a client a plan, we're bringing everybody to the table. We're bringing the accountants in. We're bringing the attorneys in, making sure everybody's on the same page. We're getting all the good advisors in the room.
That's awesome.
Godly counsel is very important.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you obviously have a lot to share, a lot of information, and it's very intriguing. And we're running out of time here. So, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you or even just find out some more, what would be the best way to do that?
The best way would be to just call. They can give me a call at 817-680-8198. You'll get one of my receptionists, and they'll get you on my calendar. I give a complimentary 30-minute, get acquainted session, discovery session to try to figure out, what I can do to help them, get them pointed in the right direction.
Thanks so much for being here today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you all for joining us today on another episode of Wall Street Today.